Most scientists will agree that the universe is vast. A smaller number of scientists would venture that the universe probably goes on forever. Virtually all will agree that it is impossible to number the galaxies or the stars which are contained within the galaxies. So numbers have been abandoned, and infinity seems to be the only realistic answer. But in mathematical terms, infinity is a slippery customer, as it is impossible to define in material terms. For example, how do you calculate odds when you are dealing with an infinite number? If I was told that I should bet on a horse that was running 5 to 1, I would understand this as fairly good odds, as I would receive £5 for every £1 that I bet if the horse won the race. But if a horse was running at 20 to 1, I would have to assume that it is less likely to win, as I would win £20 for every £1 I bet. For every pound that I win, the bookmaker loses £20. But what would happen if I was offered odds of infinity to 1? I would be lost, and so would the bookmaker, because infinity doesn't represent any number at all. 1,000,000 to 1 is fairly crazy, but it would make more sense. Even though the odds are very high, at least you know you will win £1,000,000 plus the £1 you bet. But infinity is the impossibility that we face with the universe. Cosmologists recognise this problem and so present the public with numbers such as 10 to the power of 30 or 10 to the power of 50. These numbers are so large that they may as well be infinity, as you will see. For example, the Hubble Space Telescope has calculated that the observable universe at the present moment in time is about 10 billion light years. Does this mean anything to you in reality? Only that it must be a very large number. So it may just as well be infinity. So 10 to the power of 30 is the number generally agreed upon by cosmologists as to the odds of there being a planet with life-sustaining properties like the Earth anywhere in the universe. Actually, I am probably being over-generous here, as this is more likely to be the odds for there being just a planet. If you then add on all the life-sustaining essentials in just the right amounts, such as water, heat, light and energy, and then finely tuning all the necessary elements such as gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear forces, the cosmological constant, a stable atmosphere and so on, you would need to add on another row of noughts to this figure. But I'm still being over-generous because life hasn't even started yet. For life to start from self-replicating cells and become self-sustaining and able to self-evolve without any outside interference, you would have to increase the odds even more. So that's another row of noughts. But actually I would have to add 2 rows because I have actually added 2 ingredients: life and evolution. As life on its own and going nowhere seems a bit pointless, knowing what we know about life. Well, you would think that by now the probability of anything existing at all will be approaching impossible. But there is still one more factor which, unfortunately again, increases the odds. That part of that life on Earth becomes intelligent, self-aware and conscious of good and bad. How impossible is that in mathematical terms? So the fact that you and I are here, and the Earth is here, absolutely crammed with life in every nook and cranny of the Earth's surface, beneath the sea and in the air, and part of that life is intelligent, has a 1 in 10 to the power of as many zeros as you wish of ever happening. In other words, very unlikely, bordering on impossible. I have of course assumed one thing throughout this expedition into the world of maths and probability: chance. Which brings us to the crunch of this video. The odds are so high and verging on impossible and miraculous that chance has to be ruled out. This is where most people will now disagree, as the opposite argument goes like this: chance has produced the impossible, because there are an infinite number of galaxies, stars and solar systems to produce that chance. This argument is quite good because it also explains why there appears to be only one Earth and one type of life. But remember, I say appears, as this is another fact of life that we can never be sure about. But there is another problem, and this problem, as far as I'm concerned, does rule out chance. It's called time. Let's just assume for the moment that you have the perfect planet just by chance. That's the first on our list of improbables. How long would it take for the other 4 to happen by chance? Nobody knows, but my own guess is that left to chance it would take longer than the life of the planet itself, or the life of the star which supports that planet. So the element of chance is self-defeating. The Earth is calculated fairly accurately at 4.6 billion years old, which sounds a very long time to humans. But from the point of view of chance, it is not long enough. It would have to be infinite for the chance to work at the odds of 10 to the power of 120. And of course we know that the Earth isn't infinite. Within the next few million years, the Sun will begin to change into a supernova, like all other stars in the universe. And when this starts to happen, all life on Earth will cease to exist, burnt to death by global barbecue, hotter than any known volcano. Scientists assume that the basic laws of physics, such as gravity, thermodynamics, entropy, time, space, the speed of light and so on, are consistent throughout the universe. And one of those laws, thermodynamics, tells us that energy does not last forever in the same place. The universe is not a static place where nothing happens. Suns, planets, dust, gases and energy are constantly on the move. The universe is basically a factory, reproducing itself over and over. You could say that it has its own form of evolution, and it may well be infinite within itself. Unfortunately, we know that the stars and planets within that factory are not infinite. But it is quite clear that the most unlikely happening ever to happen has in fact happened. Or you could say that the impossible has happened. And if you say that, then you might as well say that it is all a miracle, as it goes against all known natural and universal laws of nature. That is the dictionary definition, by the way, and not a word which I have plucked out of the hat to score a religious point. And one of those laws of nature which appears to have been defied is a law of mathematics, where 2 plus 2 will always equal 4, whether you live on Earth or the planet Zorb. And a square will always be a square, given the normal 3 dimensions of length, height, depth in space and time. So if we rule out chance because of the time problem, is there an alternative? For example, could the universe be self-created? All the evidence shows that the universe renews itself So could it be responsible for its own beginning, often called the Big Bang? It's a neat answer and is sufficient for all people who don't want or don't need any supernatural element. But it is not sufficient for me, as it produces the same problem as the evolution of life. All the evidence of evolution also shows that life renews itself. But do we automatically assume that it is responsible for its own beginning? Usually we don't. But the word chance usually pops up again somewhere. So for me, self-creation or self-causation of either the universe or life is an excuse to not go searching further. Because something is working well doesn't mean that it brought itself into existence and started itself off. So the scientists or atheist scientists who say the universe started itself sound very logical, but I believe they are avoiding the issue of cause and effect for reasons other than science and other than evidence. It is probably because they don't want to include the supernatural in the equation, because that would have enormous implications on their lives and the lives of everyone else that they happen to know. Life is simpler and more straightforward without any form of God, and I suppose that if your view of God has been influenced by ancient writings, such as the Old Testament Bible, where God is portrayed as a vengeful dictator who wipes out everybody who stands in his way, then it certainly is simpler and more straightforward. But it is more likely that this view of God is very contorted and one-sided, as it was quite clear that the New Testament Jesus was not vengeful, did not dictate to everybody, and wanted to save rather than destroy. But for this video I don't want to go down the religious pathway and keep to the subject of maths, science and the universe. Or if there happens to be any professional scientists watching, pseudoscience and pseudo-maths. So if the watch did start itself and chance did produce the watch, then be careful about where that leaves you. It means that you are no more than an intelligent primate descended from other primates with no future, apart from no future. And remember, that includes your own children. You have no reason to be here, apart from repeating what every other living creature repeats. A passing on of 50% of your genes and then returning to dust, as will your children. For me, this is not existence. It is non-existence. It leaves such a large gap in human knowledge and the search for meaning that I can only describe it as a complete cop-out. So if chance has to be ruled out and self-creation is an excuse for something which you don't want, we are inevitably left with design. The supernatural, super aliens, super quantum computers, or even a virtual reality world. If the universe can exist, and the Earth can exist, at such a high rate of improbability, then so can its cause. You will probably have realised by now that I am not a scientist, so here is a list of references for you to follow up so that you can confirm everything in this video. If you already half believe something about God or the supernatural, then look on them as scientific clues which he, she or it has left around for all to see. After all, if some form of God has designed the universe, he must be the universe's ultimate mathematician, chemist and physicist to do it. If you have listened to the other videos on this channel, you will know that if God exists, he, she or it does not leave evidence. He works with hidden clues, metaphors, allegories and mysteries, which we have to find, and we have to think about, and we have to give feedback on, simply because he, she or it is not going to give us the answers on a plate. This is why I believe that those scientists who introduce the supernatural into their science and then argue that it cannot exist because there is no evidence are seriously missing the point. I am going to finish with a quotation from a scientist called Fred Hoyle. Hoyle was an astronomer who lived from 1915 to 2001. In one of his books, he said this: "The chance that higher life forms might have emerged in this way is comparable with the chance that a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747 from the materials therein."